Very good afternoon to everybody, and thanks for clicking on to the Friday edition of Vogan's European Outlook. It is the 5th of December, and yes, I'm sitting in the truck. It is actually the early hours of Friday morning, 25 to 2 to be exact. Yes, I'm on the night shift, so don't worry if you're wondering why I'm up at this ungodly hour. But yeah, I want to first and foremost say that there is no live stream this upcoming weekend. The reason why this is recorded in the early portion of Friday is my wife Lindsay and I are going to a concert tonight, and there is going to be a couple of things that we're doing over the course of the weekend. So there's a couple of pre-records coming up this weekend. In fact, there's one pre-record after the one I'm just doing at the minute. There will be a global weather report coming up on probably tomorrow, and then there will be no video on Sunday. Taking Sunday off to give myself a little bit of a breather. I think I've earned it after last weekend's multiple videos, including the release of the winter forecast live stream last Sunday evening. And speaking of winter forecast, I wanted to re-emphasize a couple of points here. I'm noticing a few comments that seem to be kind of going along the lines of, uh, you know, uh, the fact that I'm not calling for a cold winter. I've got this overall emphasis being on a milder than average winter as a whole. While we've got an East QBO, a negative IOD, we've got the weak polar vortex. There is other aspects that is making me sway away from the cold aspect in terms of the whole winter period. I want to emphasize what was said back last Sunday afternoon, that confidence is very low with regards to this upcoming winter season. That was obviously back last week. I did say that it would be mild, wet, windy, frequently through at least the first half of December. More on the December idea in just a second here, but generally speaking, my gut is leaning towards milder than average temperatures and also wetter than average for the December February period. Remember, when we're talking about winter, we're talking about meteorological winter, which is the 1st of December through the 20th of February. And on the whole, when you count the entire 3 month meteorological period, I think it's going to be warmer than average. That being said, I've mentioned mid December through mid January is the window that I thought there is a possibility of colder conditions. Sure, we've got the warming of the stratosphere. We've got the wrong type of SSW. We have constructive interference going on. This graphic here, by the way, is something that is kind of playing out at the minute. This was produced all the way back to September, which is quite interesting, where I had obviously the cooling of the equatorial Pacific, i.e., the La Nina, that would potentially force the MJO towards warmer phases. So, in other words, phases 2 and 3 can be stormy phases for the UK. Phases 4 and 5 over the Indonesia region tends to lead to more higher pressure over Europe. And this type of jet orientation here, where you've got the strong jet exiting Asia, running up over the top of a high over the North Pacific, that block of high pressure over the North Pacific then allows a downstream dip in the jet over eastern North America. But incidentally, an area of low pressure somewhere in the northeast corner of the Atlantic that would drive mild Atlantic air into west or northwestern portions of Europe here. But there is that window where I think with a Mann-Julian oscillation at the moment that is very much in a favourable phase for blocking and for cold weather, it has to be said. Whether we see the adjustment of the what's going on up in the stratosphere, then that the downwelling of energy into the troposphere, the two couple up, and with that shift in the overall momentum within the hemispheric circulation, I believe that there is an opportunity, no guarantee. Listen, I'll hold my hand up and turn around and say if this doesn't happen, and until there is the evidence that basically throws this idea out the window, I'm not going to give up on it just yet. There is, yes, a possibility that this mild pattern, dumps of Arctic air into eastern North America, strong jet, mild conditions for Western Europe continues. That is very much a real possibility. But until I see otherwise, I'm going to continue to hold on to this idea that there is an opportunity. The modelling is seeing momentum being lost within the Atlantic basin. So, in other words, having this deep trough extend from North America all the way across to Western Europe here. If we look at here, let me just see very quickly. GFS extended upcoming 7-day period, and you can see here that that is very much a December 13, winter 13-14 written all over it. Yes, we've got high latitude blocking up towards Greenland, towards the north of the UK, as well as Iceland. We've got this ridge of high pressure. We've got the trough dropping into eastern North America, and look at how flat that jet is, and the trough extending from North America towards Western Europe. That is a mild situation. If we look then at the temperature anomalies for the next 7 days, you can see here that we have got very much a cold eastern North America, warm Europe, and that makes sense given what we're seeing in terms of the modelling. Now, if we go back to the upper heights here, you can see that as I play through this GFS model here, this run, look at how the trough kind of shrinks. Then we start to see higher pressure over the UK, over Ireland, and points to the north of Europe. And there's something changing to then create that change in the pattern. Notice here that we're starting to see positive heights across central and southern United States here, and the pattern is changing overall. Let's look at the northern hemispheric view here and see the difference in terms of change. So we'll go back to the here and now, and we have a very deep negative extending from Hudson Bay into the southeast, right across the Atlantic and into the UK and Ireland here. Very similar, would you not agree, with this graphic that I produced back in September? Quite interesting, I think, anyway. But I want to show you this here about the change that shows up in terms of this modeling. Remember, this is 7-day increments. This is looking at the 500 millibar pattern. And you can see here how the trough repositions. The high then starts to gain control, particularly so to the north of the UK and Ireland. Let's have a look at that was the GFS. Let's have a quick look at the ECMWF weeklies and see what it is showing here. So it is picking up on change. No guarantee it's going to happen, but this is the pattern as we head towards the period 22nd through the 29th of December. So we shall wait and see what happens. And in terms of the timing, that remains to be seen as well. In today's video, I wanted to show something here. Dreaming of a White Christmas. That is the title of today's video. I want to just basically quickly go through this article here by Kirsty McCabe. This is an article from Met Matters. This is the Royal Meteorological Society. This was a photograph, by the way, incidentally, that I took of Christmas Day from my attic looking up to the north over the Campsie Fells on Christmas Day back in 2009. And it's hard to believe that the last time we had a proper white Christmas was 2010 here in the UK. It has to be said, it is rare to see a blanket of snow covering the majority of the UK over the course of the Christmas Day period. And if we go back to this article, you can see here what Kirsty says here. So the countdown to Christmas is on. This was an article back on the 25th of November, so pretty recent. and it's feeling cold, feeling pretty cold when that northerly wind blows. But will we get a white Christmas this year? Here's what we need to know if you fancy a flutter of festive snow. While most of the UK snow days happen between January and March, the meteorological odds are pretty good for a white Christmas. Now, remember that from a Met Office standpoint, you have to have one flake of snow over a Met Office station on Christmas Day between midnight and midnight to constitute an official white Christmas in the UK. Something that I utterly disagree with. I think it's a load of nonsense that it's a 50-50 chance for the UK seeing a white Christmas every year. My opinion, anyway, a covering of snow on the ground doesn't matter what's falling from the sky or not. That, in my opinion, is a white Christmas. You can let me know in the comments section below what you think of my opinion regarding snow. I think that you have to have an inch of snow on the ground to constitute a white Christmas in the United States. So while most of the UK's snow days happen between January and March, blah blah blah, I've actually just repeated that. Sorry about that. But after an early cold spell, this was back, I think, yeah, back during the month of November when a lot of the models weren't showing that. But I had said that the pattern was becoming more favourable. We've seen that big flip around in the month of November this year. Similar happened last year. So, yep, I've got a bit of a track record, it has to be said, in terms of predicting cold spells, even when the models don't. Unfortunately, a lot of people seem to jump on each individual model run, which is not a particularly great idea. Doesn't mean that, when models are showing no cold, that it can't happen, and equally so when the models show cold, doesn't mean it is going to get cold either. But I'm trying to kind of show you the evidence in a fair and balanced way. Whatever the forecast is here on the channel. But like I say, odds from the bookmakers William Hill are looking pretty good too. That's because over 66 for the past 66 years, a snowflake has fallen somewhere in the UK on Christmas Day 54 out of 66 times. Nice little shot there of a snowy Edinburgh castle. And believe it or not, when it comes to White Christmas, the bookies will pay out for just a single snowflake to be observed falling within the 24 hours of the 25th of December at a number of official locations across the UK, including Buckingham Palace, Edinburgh Castle, Millennium Stadium in Cardiff, and Manchester's Coronation Street. Already lying snow on the ground doesn't count. The snowflake has to fall on Christmas Day. Good job too, as the Dickensian blanket of snow on the ground is much rarer, only occurring a handful of times since 1960. In 1981, 95, 2009, and 2010. So it's quite interesting, actually, that with regards to the snow cover, because that brings me on to providing you, rightly or wrongly, and I'm sure I'll get shot down in flames for this. I'm not necessarily saying that we are going to see a white Christmas widespread across the UK and Ireland, but I wanted to just show you a couple of interesting little things. Now, I wanted to first of all pick out those dates in particular: 81, 95, 09, and 2010. And this is what the 50 millibar level, so this is the lower portion of the stratosphere, looked in all those years combined during the month of December. So this is December's that produced the widespread white Christmas in the UK. This is what the temperature anomaly looked like for the month of December. And you've got December 81, 2000, because we actually did have a white Christmas in the northern half of the UK during Christmas of 2000, 2009, 2010. This is how the temperatures within the 50 millibar level look like. Now, that brings me on then to show you what the 50 millibar projection looks like in terms of coming up. And as we progress through the course of December, now at this minute in time, this reflection, this 50 millibar reflection, looks very similar to the 500 millibar pattern strong block and high pressure over northern portions of North America that then drives the cold south into the eastern side of the United States. And when you've got low heights over the northeast Atlantic, that tends to encourage lower pressure. So high pressure where you've got the warm anomalies, low pressure where you've got the cold anomalies. And notice here that as we progress through the course of this month, we see a shifting around of the warm and cold anomalies. So therefore, it's showing that the modeling is seeing movement within the 50 millibar level in terms of pressure and temperature. And this is how it looks as we move towards the Christmas period. Notice here that we've got much more uniform warming showing up North Atlantic, Greenland, up into the Arctic region here. This is not overly conducive. This has a bigger chance of being somewhat more conducive for the run up to Christmas, and then as we move into the period towards the new year. So this is the Christmas to New Year period. You can see here that we've got quite a lot of warm anomalies showing up here over the over Europe, extending up into the Arctic region here. And like just a refresher memory, this is what the Decembers look like when you had that white Christmas here, 81, 2000, 2009, 2010, which, might be nothing, but nevertheless interesting anyway. Let's have a quick look then at what the Madden-Julian oscillation is doing. Initially, we're in phase 7. It is expected to go into phases 8 and towards phases 1 as we head. In fact, it actually kind of stalls over phase 8 as we progress through the rest of this month. Now, with that change and alteration up in the stratosphere, possibly extending down into the lower stratosphere and into the troposphere, we may begin to see the effects of the MJO begin to show its hand. And the modelling is seeing that slowdown in momentum that may allow a change to take place. Remember, we're only on the 5th of December. That's another thing that I want to emphasize. The point is that we're only on the 5th of December and people are already writing off not just December, but actually the months of January and February as well. Now, this is the ideas that I've got for the month of December. I've already showed you what the winter looks like. This is how December looks like. I suspect average to above average temperature. So I'm actually going for a warmer than average December. We're also looking wetter than average for the UK as well as Ireland and Western Europe. And we're likely to be milder through at least the first half of December with a possibility of colder Christmas New Year period. Possibility. And let's have a quick look then. So the model is indicating that we have got this MJO phase 7 and 8. Now, if we look at this was of 81. This was December of 1981. We had a white Christmas and we had a warm stratosphere. The MJO rotated out of the null phase into phases 5, then 6, then 7, then 8 in 81. So it's going to these cold phases. You want to see 7, 8, and 1. That increases the chances of high latitude blocking. If we look at, so again, this is what we've got, the initial, and then forecast to go into 8 and 1, or stall in 8. This is what 1981 looked like. This is what we had in 2000. And we had the MJO going from the warm phases towards the colder phases, especially towards Christmas. We were in phase 1 around Christmas time. Looking at 2009, yes, it was in the null phase, but you can see here phases 7, 8, 1, and then a rotation into the Indian Ocean in 2009. You notice the lean towards 7, 8, and 1 in these graphics here for the month of December. Interesting how 2010 was a bit different. We did generally have a null phase, so a less active MJO phase, But the phases 4 and 5 in the early portion, then it went in towards the null phase, even crept towards phases 7 and 8, which is quite interesting here. Now, listen, if we were seeing a fairly strong MJO, we were also seeing, a fairly strong polar vortex, and we were also seeing an MJO that was more phase, in the 2, 3, 4, 5, then I would probably be saying to you, forget about any kind of change to something more wintry. But we're not seeing that, and certainly this is going to be quite interesting to watch as we go through the rest of this month. Let's have a quick look then at the same graphic. So this is the temperature anomaly at 50 millibars within the stratosphere. Let's just pick out 1981, for example, here, and we'll look at each of these years individually for the month of December, by the way, for the month of December. Let's have a look at the first plot. This is what 81 looked like. So we had a warm stratosphere in the lower portion over the Arctic connecting North America and Europe, which is quite interesting. Let's have a look at 1995. So I actually forgot. Did I actually forget 1995? I don't know. This was an interesting one here because we actually have the opposite. I'm pretty sure, if memory serves me correct, for 1995, it was actually more of a colder stratosphere in 95. Remember Christmas? What followed that was some just ridiculous levels of cold. Let's skip on to 2000 and see what it's showing, because 2000, there's a lot of similarities showing up. Sea surface temperature anomalies, the La Nina, the East QBO, the negative IOD, I believe, as well, and within the stratosphere. Look at the warming showing up here, and leaning more towards Greenland and towards the European side of the pole. So December 2000 is an interesting one. That was an interesting winter overall, actually. Let's have a quick look then at 2009, and I'm sure 2009, 2010 both had the opposite in terms of temperature within the stratosphere. We didn't really have that as much of a player. Bit of warming North Atlantic across Eurasia here. Cold pool actually up towards the northwest of North America, which is quite interesting in December 09. Remember, December 09 only started to turn after a warm and wet first half. We've seen that flip to colder, and then it really, the winter went the gangbusters after that. 2010, let's have a quick look then and see what it's showing. So I hope you're understanding where I'm coming from with this. Yeah, sure, the modelling is not massively enthusiastic. It's not necessarily showing this, textbook Greenland block, Arctic block, and trough over eastern North America, over western portions of Europe. But what's going on at the minute? Yeah, you can't dismiss 2013 into 14. Super active, energetic winter in terms of multiple lobes of Arctic air dropping into eastern North America. Very powerful supercharged jet, sending wave after wave of low pressure into the west and northwest of Europe here. This was, by the way, the stratosphere temperature anomaly in December 2010. So, just some food for thought. I think I've covered enough for today. Let me know in the comment section below what you think with regards to the definition of a white Christmas. I personally think there should be snow on the ground. Doesn't matter what falls from the sky to constitute a white Christmas. But the Met Office definition is a single flake falling at a Met Office weather station. So yeah. Global weather report will come out probably tomorrow, and then no video on Sunday. I'll be back again with the European outlook on Monday. Enjoy your weekend. Take care. Bye for now.